What can a woman who has everything lack? She has a loving husband who gives her jewelry and pleases her every chance he gets, a house with servants, beautiful children, a bright future. What else can this person lack? That's a question I didn't have an answer to until recently. Now I have an answer, and it is not a pleasant one. It took me just over an hour to drive from Atlanta to Elegy. I couldn't help but admire my wife's determination to make this journey every Saturday. Maybe it was just a casual flame, or perhaps it was something more serious. I never dared to ask. What I do know is that Scarlett had been rendezvousing with Quentin Wallace at his Elegy cabin for over 6 months. We were quite prominent in Atlanta's social circles, mainly due to my wife's involvement in philanthropic endeavors. She insisted on attending every opening, banquet, and fundraiser that came our way. Not only did it demand my time, but also my financial support. I adored my wife, but I had reached my breaking point. After the exorbitant weddings for our 2 daughters, I longed for some peace and relaxation. Yet Scarlett was seeking more, turning to other sources for validation. She found Clay Wallace at one of these fundraisers. I think I sensed it from that very first encounter, but I didn't confront my suspicions until months later. Had she tried to meet him in the city, it would have been a disaster. She was too well known to discreetly slip into a hotel. Besides, she would never entertain the thought of a motel or his condo. The cabin provided the perfect clandestine setting for them. After a lengthy drive, a single-lane dirt and gravel road wound its way about 2 miles through the mountains to the Log and Stone Lodge. Quentin, a wealthy contractor specializing in large government projects, owned most of the land between the paved road and the cabin. His knack for both making and wisely investing money was evident. It was clear he had plans for the area in the future. I drove up to the cabin with a specific task in mind, something that needed to be done quickly. Armed with a pair of wire cutters, I snipped the phone wires leading into the cabin's box. Carefully, I tucked the cut ends into the holes, making sure it wasn't obvious they had been tampered with. With no cell phone service nearby and now no landline either, the cabin was effectively cut off from communication. 20 minutes later, I was back on the main road. The sky had been cloudy and overcast the entire journey. Scarlett didn't question my early departure, nor did I ask about her plans, as she typically left about an hour later. It was a silent agreement, one that spoke volumes about the state of our marriage, indicating its deterioration. At the junction where Quentin's road branched off, there stood a diner with a few pumps out front, masquerading as a gas station. I was fortunate to snag a booth at the front, offering a clear view. 30 minutes passed before a sleek black Lincoln Navigator pulled up the road. Quentin always had a flair for grand entrances. Gas prices were merely a triviality to him. Shortly after, Scarlett arrived in her Mercedes-Benz C-Class, and then the downpour began. It wasn't your typical rain, it was the kind that persisted all day without reprieve. I knew I had to hit the road quickly before it became impassable. Quentin probably didn't worry about muddy roads, but Scarlett's Mercedes wouldn't fare as well. At this point, though, neither of them would be going anywhere. What struck me about her arrival was the timing. Tonight was our fundraiser to save the Brazilian 3-Ode Sloth, or perhaps something equally frivolous. I wasn't entirely sure. Despite planning and preparing for over 3 months, she still managed to find time to sneak away on the very day of the event to see her lover. I had to give her credit, she had done a fantastic job with the event. Even without her presence, it would run smoothly. My Honda CR-V might not have been as fancy as Quentin's Lincoln, or as sleek as Scarlett's Mercedes, but it reliably took me where I needed to go provided I didn't dawdle. After settling my bill, I trailed behind my wife and her lover as we headed up the mountain. It wasn't so much a steep climb as it was a series of winding roads. Carving paths through these mountains was no easy feat. You had to work with the terrain, which was often challenging. The rain showed no mercy, and I made it halfway up to the cabin before deciding to stop a spot where I could turn around. My parka kept me dry, though it got a bit stuffy inside. Scarlett and her lover had been at the cabin for about half an hour. I had a feeling she wanted to cut this visit short, so I wasted no time. Actually, it didn't take long at all. All I did was sabotage the valve stems on both vehicles. There was no chance they'd be able to fix the tires today. By the time the rain stopped, the roads would be so treacherous that no sane tow truck driver would dare attempt the climb. Their only option would be to trek to the diner and find alternative transport, and they wouldn't even realize what had happened until they finished their trast. They didn't have a landline or cell phone service, and if he did have internet, it was likely through the phone line. There was a chance he had a satellite phone, but I had to take that risk. I was finished. The rain persisted. 20 minutes later, I was on the 575 heading back to Atlanta. There was no particular reason for my sudden adventure, but I was feeling spiteful. Scarlett and I had been together since college. I relocated from Pennsylvania to Atlanta to join one of the state's more prestigious accounting firms. In less than a decade, I had my own accounting firm specializing in the food service industry. We handled bookkeeping, payroll, taxes, and even retirement programs. Some of our clients expanded nationally, and so did we. Our lifestyle grew with my increasing income. Sometimes I felt like I was struggling to keep pace. Everything was fine until Scarlett decided to add some variety to her life. Admittedly, I could be mistaken. Quentin was actually wealthier than me. I wasn't certain whether Scarlett was drawn to his money or his physique. I had to concede he was more attractive and seemed to be in better shape than I was. Working on construction sites probably kept him leaner than sitting behind a desk all day. He even had more hair than I did. Not that I was at the point of needing a comb-over, but it wasn't as thick as it used to be. I didn't really care why she did it. I just wanted it undone. Tonight was poised to be magnificent. I was eager to see if Scarlett would show up. If she did arrive before it ended, she would be flustered and disoriented. As I've mentioned, there was no justification for what I did. As I reached I-75, the rain persisted. I planned to leave Atlanta immediately after the party. All arrangements had been made well in advance. I had sold the business 2 months ago for cash and a 20-year percentage of the profits. 3 weeks ago, Scarlett signed the papers to sell the house to a close associate of mine. He understood my situation and was prepared to handle any issues arising from the sale. He paid me $1 million in cash for a house worth 3 times that amount. Scarlett believed she was signing forms to refinance the mortgage, which didn't exist. The remainder of my preparations involved closing accounts, credit cards, investments, and retirement policies. We had some collectibles in the house that I had no trouble pre-selling. I intended to take Scarlett's jewelry with me when I left. I wasn't going to leave her with $500,000 worth of items that I had purchased. Quentin Wallace posed another challenge. Apart from his wealth, he had extensive connections both locally and statewide. Although he wasn't a client of mine, obtaining information on him was effortless. I tasked a small team of my top people with gathering intelligence on his businesses. Quentin had a habit of winning government project bids and skimming significant portions off the top. The discrepancy between the project budgets and what his company reported was glaring. For instance, a school district project might show up as a $3 million expense on official records, but Wallace Enterprises would only declare receiving $2 million. Quentin pocketed the difference minus a few kickbacks without anyone ever cross-referencing the figures. It was impossible to incriminate Quentin with the state or local authorities because they were just as complicit as he was. However, the IRS had taken a keen interest. They were not only planning to bring down Quentin, but also offering a reward which I stood to collect. Whether I'd actually receive it remained uncertain, but perhaps luck would be on my side. As the rain intensified upon reaching Atlanta, I estimated it would take Scarlett and Clay another 2 or 3 hours to realize their predicament. I had a party to prepare for. When I got home, the caterers and other party staff were bustling about. Scarlett had planned for over 200 guests, but thankfully our house was spacious enough to accommodate them all. I greeted the workers with a smile and a wave, acknowledging their professionalism and avoiding any interference. After a long hot shower, I began gathering the last of my belongings. Scarlett would surely miss her jewelry, and I made sure to clean out my personal safe, relieved to have my small collection of gold coins. The Honda was safely parked in the garage, sparing me from getting wet as I loaded it up. Plastic runners were laid out all over the house by the party staff. Despite it being late afternoon, the sky was darkened by thick clouds, giving the illusion of my time. The rain poured down steadily. By 5 o'clock, I was dressed in my tuxedo for the evening. My daughters and their husbands arrived early to check on the preparations. They inquired about their mother's whereabouts, but I could only shrug in response. As the first guests began to arrive, my phone rang. It was my dear wife on the line. "John, I'm really sorry, but I've had some car trouble. I'll be home as soon as possible. Is everything all right there?" "Where are you? I'll come pick you up." "No, don't worry. Just stay with the guests. I'll try and get home soon. I'm really sorry. What's wrong with the car? I paid over 50 grand for that thing. It should be reliable." "I've already arranged for a garage to take care of it. You don't need to worry about it." "Damn it, Scarlett. Where are you?" "John, calm down. That's not important right now. What matters is that our guests are taken care of." She wasn't going to tell me where she was or who she was with. "Are you alone or is someone with you?" "I'm alone, but I'm fine. Please stop worrying about me. I'll be okay." Both of my daughters were relieved to hear their mother was okay. I smiled, picturing her walking from the cabin to the highway in the rain and mud. That rain was a godsend. Scarlett must be miserable by now. Wet, money, and exhausted. About an hour later, the phone rang once more. I had to excuse myself from the guests and step out to the foyer. "John, what's happening? I gave 3 different credit cards to the car rental guy and they were all declined. I can't rent a car with a credit card." "Why not call a cab?" There was a frustrated side from the other end. "It's too far for a cab. I don't need any more hassle, John. I just need to know what to do about the credit card issue. I probably can't fix it until Monday. Why don't you ride home with Quentin? The other end of the line fell silent. I couldn't even hear her breathing. After several seconds, she hung up without answering my question. The evening progressed smoothly until the girls had to leave due to their babysitters. About 10 guests remained when Scarlett made her entrance, appearing disheveled. Her hair and clothes were unkempt with lingering reddish-brown stains despite the rain washing away most of the mud. I stood there, beer in hand, smiling. It was my first of the night. It seemed she had broken the heel of one of her shoes as she kicked them off and grabbed a drink from the buffet table. "You did this, didn't you, you bastard?" she accused as she approached. I took a long sip of beer and grinned. "You'll pay for this. I swear you will pay." As our last guest departed, the caterers busied themselves with cleanup, casting strange glances at Scarlett, yet no one said anything. "I'm relieved to see you made it home in one piece. I stayed to let you know that I'm leaving. I couldn't go without making sure you were okay," I said. "Leaving? What do you mean leaving?" Scarlett's voice carried a mix of confusion and anger. "Just that I've sold the business, sold the house, and closed all the accounts. That's why your credit cards didn't work." Scarlett hurled her glass across the room, shattering it against the wall, much to the shock of the cleaner crew. "You dumb son of a bitch. Remember, half of everything is mine. I won't let you screw me over. I worked just as hard as you did to get us where we are. I earned half and I'll get it." I finished my beer and carefully set the empty can down on the table. "All right, dear, you'll get half of everything if I decide to divorce you, but I'm not planning to. Do whatever you feel you need to do." I had to walk for over 2 hours in the rain and mud just to get to the road. 2 damn hours, all because of you. What were you even doing there, darling? Why go all the way to LJ to spend the day with Quentin Wallace when you could just stay here? Lord knows I wouldn't have minded. You heartless bastard, I hate you. Well, I'm glad that's off my chest. I have a flight out at midnight. If you need to reach me, call me at— Oh wait, there's nowhere for you to reach me. I suggest letting the staff go, since you won't be able to pay them, and the new owners of the house are moving in next week. You might want to find somewhere else to live. I wouldn't recommend Quentin's place. He won't be around much longer. Maybe one of your daughters will take you in. What do you mean, Quentin won't be around? Why would he leave? He's on top of the world. I smiled as I walked out the door for the last time. My accounting and legal teams ensured that all my taxes were properly accounted for and settled. From the government's perspective, I left the company in good standing. Right now, my main focus was distancing myself from Scarlett. It wasn't that I lacked resources to share with her, but rather I didn't want to. With numerous options available, I opted not to make any immediate decisions. Instead, I compiled a list of places that intrigued me and seemed feasible to explore. Spending a year in each location felt like a good plan. I settled on starting with Belize and then moving on from there. By the end of 5 years, I figure I'd have a solid idea of where I wanted to settle down. I had a few reliable individuals who were willing to keep me updated on affairs back home. 2 weeks after arriving at Amber Grisk, I made a few phone calls. The first was to my eldest daughter, Emily. "Dad, Mom is livid, but both Mia and I tried talking to her, but she won't explain anything. All she told us is that you took all her jewelry and left her with no money or credit cards. She hasn't been home for the past few days. We have no idea where she is. Did you attempt to call her? I believe her cell phone service was disconnected. Oh, right, I forgot. The utilities are shut off at the house, so that might explain why she's not there. She could be with Quentin. Who is Quentin? Sorry, I assumed she had told you. Quentin Wallace is your mother's lover. Quentin Wallace, he's been in the news a lot lately. The FBI and others are after him. He got arrested once, but then bailed out and disappeared. What's Mom doing with him? I don't fully grasp it myself. Could be love, could be money. If he's on the run, your mom might be with him. I promised Emily I'd keep in touch with her and Mia." After 4 other calls, it was clear. No one knew where Scarlett was, and no one knew where Quentin was. It seemed they were together. Quentin could walk away from his business and still have enough money to live on for the rest of his life. Although, given his circumstances, that might not be in the good old US. I tossed and turned all night, knowing I had 2 dives scheduled for the next day. To fill the time, I decided to indulge in some scuba diving. However, things took a turn after the first dive. The rain began to pour down, not just any rain, but a torrential downpour reminiscent of the Chattahoochee. We sat in the dive boat, waiting for it to ease up. My mind wandered to the cabin in El Jai, a place I associated with bad omens. The second dive ended up being shorter than planned, and the rain persisted as we returned to shore. Luckily, my condo was within walking distance from the dock. I grabbed a quick bowl of conch chowder before heading back. As I approached the building, Gabriel R. Dorman greeted me. He always seemed to be on duty, and I suspected he relied solely on tips. Nonetheless, we had a good report. "Mr. Sullivan, no second dive today." Gabriel asked. "No, but there's always tomorrow," I replied. "Mr. Sullivan, you had 2 visitors this morning. I let them know you wouldn't be back until later this afternoon." I think they might return. Gabriel informed me that was odd. I hadn't made any friends since I arrived, and no one knew I was here. Did you catch their names? Gabriel, no, sir. I did something better. Gabriel pulled out his cell phone and tapped a few buttons. The photo was excellent. They hadn't posed for it, seemingly unaware he had taken it. Quentin sported a Hawaiian shirt, and Scarlett wore a large floppy straw hat. My wife and her lover had found me and decided to pay a visit. It's astonishing what someone can achieve with enough money. I slipped Gabriel a 20 and headed back to my room. There wasn't much to pack, so I had time to call the U.S. Embassy. They confirmed their interest in Mr. Wallace. Not only was the IRS on his trail, passport authorities wanted to know about his documents. He had surrendered his passport to secure bail. 20 minutes later, I found myself en route to San Pedro Airport. The smaller airport was more convenient for me. Rain poured down for the entire journey. U.S. officials would be waiting for Quentin at the condo. Extradition back to the States was imminent. Scarlett seemed to be left out of their plans, likely to be abandoned without money or credit cards. I wondered if she had a return ticket. 2 days later, I had settled comfortably into my new villa in Futchett. I'd feared my life would be dull without work and family, but I was mistaken. It wouldn't be long before Scarlett and Quentin tracked me down. This time, I would be prepared and vigilant. I had planned to stroll along the beach to catch the sunset, but the rain changed my plans. It was a torrential downpour, almost as if sent by some divine force. I hoped Quentin was as clever as he appeared to be. It was intriguing that he chose revenge over simply walking away. The next few years promised to be interesting. I wanted to grab some dinner, but I couldn't in this weather. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.